Welcome to Family Secrets Unveiled, where we peel back the layers of family secrets, stories you might find too strange to believe. Today, our story doesn't begin with a warning bell or a strange event, but with something incredibly familiar and beautiful: love. A love that everyone dreams of, between David and Sarah. They were the epitome of a perfect life in a small, peaceful town in New England. David was a successful architect with a warm smile like the morning sun, while Sarah was a graphic artist with deep blue eyes that always twinkled with mischief. Their little house was nestled among fiery red maple trees each autumn, and every corner was filled with love and anticipation. That anticipation was for nothing other than a child, a new life that would complete their little home. For years, they had tried everything from modern medical procedures to silent prayers. And then, a miracle happened. Sarah was pregnant. The joy was not only overwhelming for them but also spread throughout their small community. Everyone knew David and Sarah deserved this happiness, deserved to hear the laughter of a child echoing through their home. 9 months passed in a state of intense excitement and anticipation. With every ultrasound, David would hold Sarah's hand, watching their baby grow day by day on the screen. All the indicators were perfect. Everything was exactly as they had hoped. They had fully prepared the baby's room, painted the walls a soft blue, placed a white wooden crib, and hung whimsical paintings. They had chosen a beautiful name, Elijah, a name that meant hope and light. That fateful day finally arrived. It was not a stormy day, nor a gloomy full moon night, but a clear spring morning, with rays of sunlight filtering through the hospital window. Sarah had a successful delivery, and the baby's first cry rang out. It sounded like a normal cry, but it carried a strange, dry, guttural tone that made David shiver instinctively. But in that moment, he pushed the unsettling feeling aside, focusing only on Sarah's tear-filled, radiant face. They had a child. They finally had a child. The nurse brought Elijah closer, and the moment David held his son, his world seemed to stop. Elijah was a lovely baby, with jet-black hair and large, round eyes. But when David looked down, a cold shiver ran down his spine. Below the tiny mouth, where a newborn's gums should be, Elijah had two perfect, white, and sharp incisors. Not swollen gums, not a growth, but real teeth. He tried to stay calm, thinking he had misread the situation. David glanced at Sarah. She was still immersed in the pure happiness of a new mother, completely unaware of the abnormality. The initial shock quickly turned into an unnamed fear. He didn't dare ask the nurse, afraid of being considered delusional. He remained silent, holding the baby close, feeling his softness and warmth. But inside, a violent storm was brewing. Those two teeth, they were not just a medical anomaly. They were a sign, a harbinger of something deeper, something he couldn't explain. He started observing everything more meticulously, and the little details he had previously ignored now seemed terrifying. Elijah's cry was unlike other babies' cries. It wasn't a cry for food or a diaper change. It was a low, guttural moan, sometimes sounding like a whisper. Only when Sarah was near did the cry seem more normal. But when it was just him and Elijah, the strange, eerie tone returned. David kept this fear to himself. He didn't want to worry Sarah. She had already gone through so much. He told himself it was just a rare medical case, some kind of benign mutation. But deep down, a voice whispered to him that things were not that simple. The following days, he lived in a state of extreme tension. He constantly checked Elijah's mouth, and every time he saw those two teeth, a shiver went down his spine. They weren't just on the upper jaw. After a few days, another pair of teeth had grown on the bottom. He secretly searched online for information, but there were no similar cases, no logical explanations. All he found were ancient legends, stories of babies born with teeth, considered a bad omen, a sign of a dark force. David was a rational man, an architect who believed in logic and numbers, but those stories, those legends, haunted him in a strange way. Sarah remained happy. She was completely absorbed in her world as a mother. She never noticed the small details that David saw. To her, Elijah was an angel. He wondered if he should tell Sarah. Would she believe him, or would she think he was delusional, obsessed with silly stories? He didn't want to shatter their fragile happiness. But the fear grew, like a dark shadow enveloping their light-filled home. Then one evening, after Sarah had fallen asleep, David held Elijah in his arms. The baby was sleeping soundly, with an angelic face. But when he stroked the baby's cheek, Elijah suddenly opened his eyes. Those black eyes looked straight at him, deep and cold, without a hint of a child's innocence. Then the baby smiled, a silent smile, just a twitch of the mouth, revealing the two sharp incisors. It wasn't a baby's smile. It was a cryptic smile, a smile David had never seen on a baby's face. In that moment, he knew he couldn't run from it anymore. There was something terrifying hidden behind his son's adorable appearance. That strange smile from Elijah became a horrifying obsession for David. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the image of the two sharp white teeth on his son's innocent face. The fear had turned into vigilance, and he began to notice every small gesture from Elijah. He saw abnormal behaviors that Sarah, in her overwhelming maternal joy, completely failed to notice. Elijah rarely cried. When he was hungry, he would only give a soft whine. When his diaper was wet, he remained silent. There was only one odd thing. He always woke up at exactly 3 a.m. every night. It wasn't a cry for a feeding, but a chilling silence. David tried several times to wake up at that time to check on him, and he always found Elijah with his eyes wide open, staring into a void. Those black eyes didn't look sleepy or dazed. They shimmered as if they were listening to something only he could hear. Then one night, while he was walking around the room holding the baby to lull him to sleep, David heard a whisper. It wasn't an adult's whisper, but a dry, raspy sound, coming from Elijah himself. It wasn't a baby's babble. The sound was like the whistling of wind through a narrow crevice, incoherent words but carrying a strange, chilling eeriness. David froze, his heart pounding. He tried to listen closely, and he was certain they were disjointed words. A word, it sounded like mother, and then another like old one. David trembled, holding Elijah close, covering his ears as if afraid the whispers would harm him. But he knew it was his son's voice. That event pushed David into a desperate search. He secretly went through Sarah's medical records, everything related to her pregnancy. Everything seemed normal. There was no record of any surgery or unusual medical intervention. However, he found one small detail he had previously ignored. Sarah had once had a checkup at a private clinic she had never mentioned to him. The clinic was named Helios Clinic. David asked Sarah about it, and she just brushed it off, saying it was a clinic near her workplace and she had just stopped by for one extra ultrasound to be sure. Sarah's answer sounded logical, but David sensed a hesitation, something she was trying to hide. David decided to investigate the Helios Clinic. It was an old, dilapidated building, tucked away in a small alley. The doctor there, an elderly man named Dr. Alistair Finch, seemed kind on the surface, but his eyes held a strange coldness. When David asked about Sarah's records, he became incredibly defensive. Dr. Finch said it was confidential information and refused to provide any details. But when David mentioned that his baby was born with teeth, Dr. Finch's expression changed. He looked at him cryptically and said only one thing. Sometimes, nature has secrets that cannot be explained. That sentence made David feel that Dr. Finch was hiding something much bigger. The suspicion began to spread to Sarah as well. He started observing her more closely. Sarah was still his loving wife, but at times he saw a distance, a strangeness in her eyes. Once he accidentally touched a necklace she always wore. It was a silver necklace, engraved with a bizarre symbol, like a circle with a zigzag line in the middle. Sarah immediately pulled her hand away, and her face became panicked. He asked her about the symbol, and she just said it was a gift from her grandmother and that it brought good luck. But David didn't believe her. He felt that the necklace had a deeper meaning, a meaning she didn't want him to know. Their relationship began to fray. David couldn't tell her what he was seeing, and Sarah felt he was becoming more and more distant. She thought he was suffering from postpartum depression. But the truth was far more sinister. David felt trapped. He loved Sarah, but he was also afraid of her. He was afraid there was a part of her he didn't know, a dark secret slowly revealing itself. Then one night, as David was sitting in front of his computer, he found an old newspaper article about a mysterious disappearance that had happened 20 years ago in that very town. A young girl named Olivia had vanished without a trace. This girl had one single best friend, Sarah. David remembered Sarah had once told him about her missing best friend, and she always seemed incredibly sad when she mentioned it. But as he read more closely, he discovered a horrifying detail. Olivia also had a similar necklace, with the same strange symbol. Everything began to link together in a terrifying way. The necklace, the Helios clinic, the baby's whispers, and now Olivia's disappearance. David began to suspect that Elijah's birth was not a coincidence. It could be the result of a pact, a ritual, something Sarah had done in the past, a secret she had hidden for years. The fear had turned into anger and utter despair. He didn't know who to trust anymore. His beloved wife, his longed-for child, all were slowly becoming strangers. He felt like he was standing before a closed door, and he knew that if he opened it, his life would never be the same again. The truth about the necklace and Olivia's disappearance plunged David into a mental breakdown. He could no longer face Sarah normally. Every time she smiled at him, he saw something fake, a buried secret. He decided to take action. He had to find the truth. David returned to the Helios clinic, but this time he didn't come to ask questions, but to search. He broke into Dr. Finch's office, rummaging through every document. It wasn't until he found an old leather-bound journal, hidden carefully under the floorboards, that he found the answers. The journal wasn't a patient record, but a personal diary of Dr. Finch, chronicling the secrets of an ancient lineage. In the journal, Dr. Finch wrote about an ancient curse of a lineage called the Old Ones. This lineage had a special ability. They could prolong their lifespan by transferring their souls into a new body, a newborn baby, at the very moment of birth. But to do that, they needed a conduit, a mother willing to sacrifice her child. And for the ritual to succeed, the baby had to be born with 2 teeth, a sign of a soul that had lived before. Dr. Finch revealed that he was the guardian of this lineage. He had secretly been helping them for years. He had recognized that Sarah had a special seed, a rare energy that could become the perfect conduit. But the most terrifying thing was the name of Olivia, the girl who had disappeared 20 years ago, recorded in the journal. Olivia had not disappeared. She had been sacrificed. Sarah, Olivia's best friend, had been forced by the people of the Old Ones to witness the entire process. And afterward, she had to swear to become the conduit for the next generation. The necklace was not a good luck charm, but a curse, a chain that bound Sarah to the destiny of that lineage. David read on, and he realized the horrifying truth. The soul transferred into Elijah was not a nameless soul. It was the soul of Sarah's mother, who had died 2 years ago. She had orchestrated everything to return, and Sarah had to accept, because she threatened to harm David if she refused. Sarah loved him more than anything, and she had sacrificed her own child to protect him. The whispers David heard were not the innocent words of a child, but the whispers of an old soul slowly taking over Elijah's body. David felt everything crumble before his eyes. His love, his happiness, all were a lie, a tragic play in which he was the main character. He no longer felt fear. Instead, there was an intense anger and sorrow. He had been deceived, not by Sarah, but by a malevolent force that had taken her over. He ran home, finding Sarah holding Elijah. His tears fell. He understood everything. He gently touched her shoulder, and she jumped. He held the journal out in front of her. Her face turned pale. She couldn't hide it anymore. Sarah recounted everything, from the days she was haunted by Olivia's disappearance to the moment her mother died and her soul constantly haunted her, forcing her to follow the curse to protect him. The climax of the story was the arrival of Dr. Finch. He had been following David, and now he had come to complete the final ritual. He wanted David to become one of the guardians of the Old Ones. Sarah begged him, saying she had done everything he asked, but he just laughed cruelly. Olivia's sacrifice was just the first step, Sarah. Now your child will become a member of our family, and he will be with you forever. And he, your husband, will become the new guardian. David confronted Dr. Finch, the leather journal in his hand. He had the evidence, but he knew it meant nothing to these people. Dr. Finch approached, a small dagger engraved with strange symbols in his hand. He said, "Now, let me free your soul from the burden of the body." Sarah screamed. She held David, shielding him. She told him, "I won't let you hurt him." David felt her love and despair. He knew he had to do something to save both of them. A glance back, a look of extreme pain and despair, he looked at Elijah. The baby was lying silently in Sarah's arms, his eyes still wide open. But this time, they no longer held that coldness. They held a faint fear. David suddenly knocked over a table with candles on it, and a fire erupted. Dr. Finch panicked. As he tried to put out the fire, David grabbed Sarah and Elijah and ran out of the house. But as they reached the door, Dr. Finch blocked them. He looked at David angrily. "You cannot escape your destiny," he said. "That soul is already in your son. It won't leave." Just then, Elijah whispered again, a different whisper. This time it was much clearer. "Mom, save me." Sarah and David looked at each other. Sarah's tears streamed down her face. She knew her baby boy's soul was still there. It was fighting. They had been wrong to think that the old one's soul had completely taken over Elijah's body. In reality, the two souls were in conflict, and the real battle had only just begun. The confrontation with Dr. Finch brought everything to a head. David and Sarah fled together, carrying their son who was torn between two souls. They ran without a destination, trying to escape the relentless pursuit of Dr. Finch and his followers. The escape became a painful and desperate journey. They had to sleep in their car, eat sparingly, and always live in a state of high alert. Every time David looked at Elijah, he felt an indescribable pain. His baby boy, who should have been a symbol of love, was now the battleground for a brutal spiritual war. Elijah's whispers became more and more powerful. One moment it was the voice of a scared child, begging to be saved, but right after it was a low, dry, raspy sound, filled with anger and power. Once, David witnessed a horrifying sight. Elijah was in his arms, but his eyes turned amber, a cold and malevolent color. The baby squeezed his hand tightly, and then a dry moan came out, but it was complete words. "You cannot hide him. He is mine." David knew it was not his son. It was the soul of Sarah's mother. She had returned, and she was not giving up. They found an old seer in the countryside, a woman with knowledge of ancient rituals and family curses. She examined Elijah and said to them with certainty, "That soul has taken a part of the child, but it hasn't gained complete control. The power of love of the two of you still remains in your son. You can save him." The old woman gave them a precious stone, saying it was an artifact with the ability to absorb and purify souls. She told them they had to perform a ritual, a painful one, to separate the old one's soul from Elijah's body. The ritual required them to place the stone on the baby's forehead at exactly 3 a.m., when the other soul was at its strongest state. They had to pray together, and most importantly, they had to believe that their love was stronger than any curse. That night, David and Sarah performed the ritual as the old woman had instructed. The small house was shrouded in darkness. The clock's hands ticked by slowly. At exactly 3 a.m., when Elijah opened his eyes, the two of them placed the stone on his forehead. The baby began to convulse, and horrifying moans came out. The stone started to glow, then turned as black as coal. The room shook, and David saw a faint black smoke escape from Elijah's mouth, then fly straight into the stone. The baby's cry changed from one of pain to relief. Then the crying faded, and Elijah fell into a deep sleep. When it was all over, they looked at the stone. It had shattered, and the fragments slowly dissolved into the air. They had succeeded. They had saved Elijah. The next morning, when David held his son, he cried. The baby slept peacefully, his breathing steady, and when Elijah woke up, his eyes were bright and clear, completely devoid of the previous coldness. The terrifying teeth were also gone, replaced by the pink gums of a normal newborn. Somehow, the child's soul had returned, and all traces of the curse had vanished. They returned home, starting a new life, a life without the ghosts of the past. Dr. Finch had disappeared, and no one from the old one's lineage ever came looking for them again. A peaceful life returned, but in David and Sarah's hearts, a haunting memory remained. They would never forget what had happened. They would never forget the whispers in the dark, or the terrifying smile of their son. This story is a reminder that there are family secrets, ancient curses that we cannot explain with logic. It is also a story about love, sacrifice, and faith. David and Sarah defeated a dark force with their love. But did they truly win completely? Or was it just a temporary lull? Finally, I want to ask you a question. Should we seek the truth? Or should we let some secrets remain forever buried? If the story gave you a chill, be sure to like and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe to Family Secrets Unveiled and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next mysterious and dramatic stories. Thank you for listening.